Nobody told Isla about the letter. Not her mother, not her Uncle Douglas, not the solicitor who had handled her grandmother's affairs for 30 years. Nobody told her, because nobody knew it existed. And that was exactly how Margaret Mackenzie had planned it. There is a house on Balmoral Crescent in Edinburgh that the Mackenzie family has not spoken about in 10 years. Not because they forgot it, because they all believed they knew exactly what happened to it. They believed Douglas got it. Douglas, the eldest son, the dependable one, the one who stayed close, the one who managed his mother's affairs when she could no longer manage them herself, the one who told the rest of the family, quietly with appropriate grief, that Margaret had made her wishes clear before the dementia set in. Douglas gets everything. Saul and nobody questioned it. He had the paperwork, he had the solicitor's letter, he had the deed. So the family grieved, and Douglas inherited. A 4-bedroom Victorian terrace, 2 savings accounts, a modest investment portfolio, everything Margaret Mackenzie had spent 60 years quietly, carefully building. The family accepted it. Even the ones who found it surprising. Even the ones who found it a little convenient. Because that is what families do. They accept the version of events that avoids the argument. They accept the paperwork. They move on. But here is what no one in that family knew, on the day they buried Margaret Mackenzie, is that 12 years before she died, she had already decided who was going to get everything. And it wasn't Douglas. This is the house on Balmoral Crescent, and this is the Unspoken chapter. Before we continue, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell. Every week on this channel, we tell the stories families keep locked in silence, the inheritance disputes nobody talks about, the wills rewritten in secret, the truth that one person finally decided to speak. If that's the kind of story that keeps you up at night, you're in the right place. Now, let's go back to Edinburgh. To understand what Margaret did, you have to understand what this family looked like from the outside. From the outside, they looked perfectly fine. A Scottish family, 4 generations in Edinburgh, a grandmother everyone respected, a son who stayed, a daughter, Caroline, who had emigrated to Canada in the early 90s, married a man named David Brennan, and built a quiet life in North Vancouver. Caroline and her mother spoke on the phone every Sunday, but they hadn't been close for a long time, not since Caroline left. Not since Douglas became the one who stayed. And Douglas was useful. That was his gift. He drove his mother to appointments, handled her banking, sorted her correspondence, and when the time came, sat with the solicitor and explained what Margaret had always wanted. Nobody contradicted him. Why would they? He was the one who showed up. But privately, and this is the part the family never understood until it was too late, Margaret Mackenzie had been watching Douglas very, very carefully for a very long time. She started noticing things in the year 2000, small things at first. A direct debit she didn't remember authorizing, a figure on her statement that didn't match what Douglas had told her, a question she asked him, gently because she was always gentle, and an answer that came back just a little too smooth. She didn't confront him. She was 70 years old, he was her son, and she had built her entire life around the belief that family does not do that to family. So instead of confronting him, she started keeping records. In a small green notebook she kept in the drawer of her bedside table. Dates, figures, things Douglas said, things that didn't add up. By 2001, she had filled 2 notebooks. By 2002, she understood exactly what was happening. Douglas was not stealing from her in dramatic, obvious ways. He was siphoning, slowly, carefully, plausibly. Amounts small enough to explain away. Transactions framed as maintenance, insurance, administrative fees. Repairs to the house that, when she quietly checked, she could never quite confirm had been done. Over 3 years, she estimated he had taken somewhere between 40 and 60,000 pounds. She did not go to the police. She did not confront him. She did not call Caroline. She did what Margaret Mackenzie had always done when faced with something too large for the room she was standing in. She dealt with it quietly. She went to a solicitor, a different one Douglas had never met. She sat down, placed her hands flat on the desk, and said, "I want to make a document my son will never see. Not until it is too late for him to do anything about it." She signed the document. She came home. She made Douglas a cup of tea. And she never mentioned any of it for the rest of her life. That is the first truth this family buried. Not that Douglas stole from his mother, but that Margaret knew and said nothing, not out of weakness, but out of strategy. Isla Brennan, she used her father's surname in Canada, was not close to her grandmother. That is the honest truth, and it matters. She would be the first to tell you that. She knew Margaret as a small woman with silver hair and a dry sense of humor who sent a card every birthday, who smelled of lavender and kept digestive biscuits in a tin by the kettle, who was part of her life the way background music is part of a room, present, familiar, easy to stop noticing. She was not the devoted granddaughter in this story. She was just a young woman who, in the summer of 2009, came back to Edinburgh because she had nowhere else to be. She was 27. She had just ended a long relationship. Yet she needed somewhere quiet to think. Her mother, Caroline, said, almost as an afterthought, "You should visit Gran if you have time. She's in a care home now. Douglas visits, but you know Douglas." Isla didn't know what that meant, but she went. She expected to go once. She went every week for 4 months. She went because Margaret made her laugh, because there was something sharp and completely undeceived about her grandmother that she hadn't expected. Because Margaret talked to her like a specific person, not a category of grandchild, and asked questions that actually required answers. And she went because she noticed something. Nobody else did. Douglas visited irregularly. His wife, never. Their children, Isla's cousins, she never once saw. There were cards on the windowsill, several of them. Oh, but the vase on the table held flowers that Margaret had bought for herself, because she liked having them, not because anyone brought them. Isla started bringing flowers. Margaret never mentioned it. But one afternoon, near the end of that summer, Margaret held Isla's hand before she left, and looked at her with an expression Isla couldn't quite name. Not sadness, not gratitude, something more deliberate than either. "You're a good girl," she said. "You always were. You just didn't know I was watching." Isla flew back to Vancouver in September. She didn't think much about those words, not then. Isla turned 30 in October 2012. She was living in a 1-bedroom apartment in East Vancouver, working as a project manager, dating someone she wasn't sure about. That's moving through her life the way most people do at 30, with enough momentum to avoid thinking too carefully about direction. She was not thinking about Edinburgh. She was not thinking about her grandmother who had died 18 months earlier. She was not thinking about wills or property or sealed documents. She got the letter on a Tuesday. Brown envelope, Scottish postmark, the name of a firm she'd never heard of, Cairns and Associates, Edinburgh. She almost left it on the kitchen table and opened it later. She didn't. Inside, a formal letter, and a sealed inner envelope, with her name on it. In handwriting she recognized immediately, her grandmother's handwriting. The outer letter explained in careful legal language that Margaret Mackenzie had executed a secondary testamentary document in January 2002, that it had been held in sealed trust by the firm, that it was to be delivered, unopened, on the 30th birthday of Isla Brennan, and that the informal arrangements conveyed by Douglas Mackenzie had never been formalized under Scots law. In plain language, Douglas had no legal claim. He had presented documents, administrative letters, informal transfers, accepted by a solicitor who was too close to the family to question them. But Margaret had known exactly what she was doing. She had gone elsewhere. She had made it watertight, and she had left Isla everything. The house on Balmoral Crescent, the accounts, the investments, everything Douglas had not already taken. Isla sat down on her kitchen floor, and she opened her grandmother's letter. It was 4 pages long, written in Margaret's careful, unhurried hand. Oh, and I'm going to share what matters most, because this is the part the family never got to hear. This is the unspoken chapter. Margaret wrote, "You will be wondering why I chose you. You may think it was sentiment, that I didn't think it through. I want you to know that I thought about nothing else for 10 years. She wrote, "I watched what Douglas did to what I built. I watched him take it apart slowly, the way mice take apart a house, quietly, in the dark, so that by the time you see the damage, the structure is already compromised. I said nothing to him. I said nothing to your mother. I kept the notebooks. They are with Elspeth. They are yours now, too." And then, near the end of the letter, she wrote this. "You came when no one asked you to. You sat with me every week when you had better things to do with your summer. You never asked about the will. You never angled for anything. You just came. And you brought the flowers. And I thought, she is the only one who came without a reason. Which means she is the only one I can trust." And at the very end of 4 pages of clarity and sorrow and something that reads underneath everything like relief, she wrote, "I am sorry I didn't tell you while I was alive. I was afraid of what it would cost you. I thought it was kinder to let you find out when you were old enough to handle it and young enough to do something with it. I hope I got the timing right." Isla did not call Douglas immediately. She sat with it for a week. She called her mother Caroline first, who went silent on the phone for a long moment, and then said, "She knew. She always knew. I wondered. Oh, I never said." That silence between a mother and a daughter, the thing they both suspected and neither of them named, that is its own unspoken chapter. That is a story for another time. When Isla finally called Douglas, he was not remorseful. He was furious. He called the document a forgery. He called Isla manipulative. He said things to her on that call that she has not repeated in full to anyone. But here is what he did not say. He did not say, "I didn't take the money." He did not say, "Your grandmother was confused." He did not say, "There has been some mistake." He said, "You don't understand how much I sacrificed for that woman. You don't understand what I gave up." And in that sentence, without meaning to, Douglas Mackenzie confirmed everything his mother had written in those notebooks. The legal process took 14 months. Douglas challenged the document. The challenge failed. The notebooks were examined. The solicitor, Elspeth Cairns, now a senior partner, gray-haired, precise, testified. The house on Balmoral Crescent was transferred into Isla Brennan's name in the spring of 2014. 2 years after the letter arrived, the same season her grandmother had died. She has never lived in it. She lets it. And the income, every month, quietly, without fanfare, pays for a care home in North Vancouver, where her father David now lives, with flowers on the table every week, put there by his daughter, who drives over every Sunday, without being asked. We talk about family betrayal like it announces itself, like the villain steps forward, like someone raises their voice, like there is a moment when you know. But Douglas Mackenzie never announced himself. He was the helpful one. He was the present one. He was the son who showed up and spent years quietly converting that presence into currency. And Margaret, clever, watchful, private Margaret, understood that the most dangerous kind of betrayal is the kind that comes dressed as loyalty. She didn't fight him with noise. She fought him with patience. She chose the one person whose presence had no agenda attached to it, the one who came not because there was something to gain, but because she thought her grandmother was funny, because she noticed the vase had no flowers, because she showed up for no reason, and that was enough. We reward the ones who perform love loudly. We overlook the ones who love quietly. Margaret Mackenzie didn't overlook Isla. She just waited until she was 30 to say so. And the unspoken thing passed quietly between generations. The truth hidden inside love. And sometimes, naming that truth is where healing finally begins. If this story stayed with you, share it. Subscribe to The Unspoken Chapter and tell us in the comments, what was the unspoken chapter in your life? Because every family has one. and every silence eventually asks to be heard. See you in the next chapter.